Today we're going to talk about city and school governments.
Okay.
So in the opening ceremony, we alluded to the fact that it's important for citizens to know what's happening around them, and that starts with the city and the school, right? It's important. We know a lot about the federal government from school, but a lot of things that we don't learn are about the city and the school, and they're actually a lot more important than you might think. So before we get started, it's important for us to understand, here's a flow diagram of how the governments in our state work. So at the top, obviously, we live in California. We're all part of the state, which is called California. In California, you have counties. There are 58 counties. Each county is like a subdivision of California. And so you have Santa Clara County, Los Angeles County. And within each county, you have groups of cities. And so in this case, Cupertino and San Jose are called cities. And so what we're going to do throughout this course is we're going to start from the bottom at the city level. We're going to learn about what your responsibilities as a citizen of a city is. And we're going to work our way up towards, on Sunday, tomorrow, we're going to start talking about what it means to be a county citizen and what it means to be a state citizen. And somewhere along the line, we're also going to talk about being part of a school board and what a school board is exactly. So first of all, what is a city? Well, a city is really just a group of citizens. It's a division of people. And so a city has power of self-government. That means the city can decide what it wants to do. Now, there are obviously certain things that they have to follow. For example, they have to follow county rules. They have to follow state rules. These are obviously going to be more important than the city rules. And the cities are in charge of certain important things that you might see around you. For example, police, fire, parks, Cupertino Library. This is all made by the city. It's governed by the city. And building and land regulation is also something that's important for the city. So something that's been really topical these days is VALCO. It's obviously a very contentious topic about whether or not it should stay, as currently being debated a lot through the city, but obviously this is something that the city has control over. So if you're interested in VALCO, you should be interested in city government, because that's what is going to decide what the fate of VALCO. And so how do we establish a city? How does a city come to be? What is Cupertino? How did Cupertino form? So it's something called incorporation. It's a process by which cities are formed. So let's say you have a piece of land in California that's not really a city yet. It's just a piece of land lying there. Then you can go through something called incorporation. And incorporation has to do with LAFCO, which is a commission that really decides whether a piece of land can be a city. It'll maybe like something that on top of a mountain that's like always snowy might not be something that LAFCO wants to create a city of. And so LAFCO ultimately decides whether a group of individuals in a certain area are able to create a city. And so when you have these areas that are unincorporated, through LAFCO they can become cities. Obviously the people themselves have the ability to veto this thing. So if more than 25% of the people don't want to become a city through LAFCO, then they can protest this incorporation, and the city does not form. But ultimately, once LAFCO gives the green light, most of the time the city does become formed. And so in 1955, LAFCO allowed the creation of Cupertino, which was through the Santa Clara County. So let's talk about the types of cities. There are two types of cities, and they have an interesting relationship in that one is sort of an extension of the other. So let's first talk about general law cities. After LAFCO creates a city, this city is called a general law city. Every city always starts off as a general law city. And what a general law city is it's really just a city that has its own powers, but the powers it exercises must obey state and county rules. So really you're just an actor of state legislature, county legislature. You're really just an actor. But once a city reaches a certain size and it has a petition to become a charter city, then you have something called home rule, which means that cities can pass their own ordinances that need not adhere strictly to county or state regulations. They have their own abilities to do certain things. But generally, you still have the state and law they're going to supersede the rules that you pass in the charter city, which means that you can't contradict what the county or the state has passed in their own constitutions. But say like you want to make a rule in yours charter city that you can only walk backwards in the bathroom, and it doesn't counteract anything else that's stated by the state and the county. Then you can pass this through a city ordinance, which is one of the powers of the charter city. They can pass their own laws freely, so long as it doesn't contradict the laws above them. So now let's talk about entities. I call these municipal entities, and this is just a fancy way of saying entities of the city. So people or organizations in the city that are important. So first of all, you have the city council. City council is really like the ruling board of a city. It helps run the city. And usually it's 5, though in some charter cities they make it 7 or 9, elected members of the city who are responsible for passing and adopting ordinances. So, for example, if I want to instate a new law, I'm going to go through the city council. And the city council runs a lot of city meetings that have people discuss. And through these city meetings, they come up with ordinances and pass them through. And usually there's no compensation, but this sometimes it changes, and it all depends on what the city decides. So of the city council, you have some appointed figures. So the first appointed figure is the mayor. The mayor is interesting because you have a city council of usually 5 members, and instead of like the presidential election where every citizen votes for the president, the mayor is elected only through the city council. So once the city council is decided, you have say 5 members, they're going to convene, and they themselves are going to choose the mayor. So really, it's just these 5 people who are choosing the mayor. So it's not really an elected position, it's more of an appointed position, which is that these 5 people are going to choose by themselves. And there are some other appointed positions too. But first of all, let's talk about the mayor. So the mayor is a member of the city council. So if you have 5 members of the city council, you would have 1 mayor and 4 city council members that are not a mayor. But the mayor is really still a city council member. And this mayor has executive power over the group of 5 of the city council. And there are some other appointed positions here, as you can see. You have city attorney, police chief, and city engineer. It's important we understand the difference between appointing and electing. So when these positions are appointed, what will happen is people will volunteer to be like, say I want to be a city attorney. I will volunteer to be a city attorney, and I'm not going to be voted into a city attorney. Rather, the city council is going to decide whether or not I'm going to become a city attorney. So if I'm the only one in my city who wants to be an attorney, I by default am an attorney. Obviously if I have a bar degree and whatever. But if I want to be a certain position and I'm the only one who wants to, then I'm immediately appointed. Let's say some other people also want to be appointed to a certain position. This is not a matter of electing. It's a matter of the city council deciding who is going to be, the city attorney or the police chief. And so I can still campaign, I can still give my speech, but in the end of the day, it's not the people. It's going to be the city council who are going to decide whether or not I'm going to be this position. Obviously, there are still elected positions in the city. The most 2 prominent ones are the clerk and the treasurer. So these are people who are elected by the city members themselves. This is kind of like a presidential election where every single person is 1 vote. So one of them is the clerk, which is actually a very important function of the city. It keeps records of all the proceedings, so it's really important that you have a clerk that's able to keep track of what's going on and make sure everything's filed properly. And of course you have the treasurer, which takes care of city funds, and each month they'll submit something to the clerk that talks about all the transactions, make sure that all the funds are going smoothly and transparently. So what are your powers as a city member? As a city member, you are called the electorate of the city, and you have powers. So the first power you have, obviously, is you can elect. You can vote for your city council, your treasurer, your clerk, and obviously who you vote does influence further appointed positions as well. So it's really important that you elect. I'm sure you've heard that voting is important, and this is also the case in the city. You decide a lot of the things, either indirectly or directly, that go on in your city. But apart from electing, you also have the ability to do your own legislation as a group. And so there are 3 main forms of actions that the city can participate in. The first is the initiative. Initiative is sort of a petition that you propose some question. Say you want to have on the ballot a certain idea. You have an idea that you think might make the city better. And so what you're going to do is you're going to form an initiative. You're going to petition with a lot of other people to propose a certain question. And if you receive enough votes, this question is going to go on the ballot. And so if this really is a good policy, in theory, you're going to get something on the ballot, and if it's on the ballot, it has a chance of becoming true law. Another thing you can do is referendum, and this is sort of the inverse of initiative, which is that initiative is bringing across a new idea, a new policy, whereas referendum is to look at a past policy and question it. And generally how this happens is also a petition, but what it does is you remove unpopular legislation. So say there was a law in the past that you didn't like, and you think many people also didn't. So through this petition, what you're going to do is you're going to challenge this law and put it on the ballot to remove this law. And another thing you can do is recall. Recall is to remove someone, say like city manager, from public officer before the end of the term. So it's kind of like impeachment, but it's important to understand the difference between the 2. Impeachment is generally a legal idea, meaning that if someone obstructs justice, breaks the law, then you can impeach this person. This is different from recall. Recall is a lot more loose of a term. You're saying that you can really just recall someone if you don't like them, but a group of people has to not like them. So recall is a lot more loose in impeachment in that the person who's being recalled need not have conducted any offense. It's just that maybe this person is unpopular. Maybe their policies are unpopular. And this is where city differs a little bit from the state. So now we're going to go on to the school district, which is not really part of the hierarchy in terms of the government, but it's an important thing for us to all understand. So some familiar school districts, CUSD, FUHSD, are 2 important ones that many of you might be familiar with. So what exactly is a school district? A school district is comprised of public schools. So like Lynbrook High School, Kennedy Middle School, they all make up school districts of their own. And in this school district, you are governed by a school board. A school board is generally a group of people, kind of like a city council, where you have a group of people who are making decisions. And so this is really a local government. It's not just, you know, a corporation or something. It has its own powers, and it has powers similar to the to the city and the town. So its main power is to exercise taxation. I'm sure many of your parents know that you pay a lot of taxes towards public school districts, usually on housing. And another ability that's not really relevant to California, but it happens across the world, is eminent domain, which means that schools can really take care of your houses, and they can like make you move out of your house if it means they can, you know, create more space. So this is obviously something that's a little contentious, but it is given in their policies that they can exercise eminent domain. And each school board has a superintendent. So this is sort of like the mayor of the city council, which is that of the school board, you're electing one person that's kind of like the executive role in this in the board. So usually, going through public schooling, you will go through two different school districts. One during primary school, one during high school. So for example, K through 8, you might go through the Cupertino Union School District, CUSD. But then once you go into high school, you might change. So that would be like the Fremont Union High School District. There is also something called the Unified District, which is where you combine primary and high school. This is one important case is like Palo Alto, which is pretty nearby. They have a unified school district, which means that going from primary to high school, you have the same sort of government form of the school board. And so what are the responsibilities of a school board or a school curriculum? What you're going to do is, so in the school board, members were going to select curriculum. So like all these books, probably boring books that you're reading in literature, they're probably selected by these people. They select a short list, and you know your schools have to adhere to the materials that are selected. Assigning and hiring and firing staff is all taken care of by the school board. Finances obviously are really important. School lunches, where you're getting to eat, how long each day is. And school maintenance is also really important. So like the equipment, your facilities, all these things are decided and monitored by the board. So as you can see, in the school board you have a lot of roles that require a large breadth of knowledge. Maybe you want someone to take care of finances, someone else to be an educator for curriculum. So it's very similar to the city actually, because you need to have people who specialize. So in the school board, a lot of the times you have, you know, treasurers that take care of finances. You have educators that deal with the curriculum, and these people have to be specialized. And so this is where you can draw a very nice connection between the city and the school board. Even though they're rather different things, the way their government works is actually very similar. You have a group of people at the top, a city council or a school board, that decides most of the policies. And of this group of people, you have an elected person, so a mayor or a school superintendent. And under these people, you have people who have specialized, you know, treasurers, you have curriculum, educators. And these are important things that, you know, are important to both the cities at the city level as well as the school board level. You have to have specialization in your government. So what exactly are public schools now? Public schools are what makes up these school boards. So each school board has public schools under it, and that's really what gives the school board substance. So public schools are available geographically, meaning that if I live in someplace X, then this place X, you know, is under a public school district, then I am obligated to go to this public school, unless of course I go to private school or boarding school or something like that. Public schools are generally paid for by property taxes, which means that, you know, the houses that you buy are taxed, and that money usually goes to the schools. That money is what's funding the schools. But you also have like donations, fundraising. I'm sure you guys have seen this in your public schools. And this will, and sometimes a little bit of federal help, but ultimately this is mostly a minority. The primary funding for public schools comes from property taxes, and so that's what really gives them their substance. And so it's important to understand one takeaway from this, the first day of this lecture, which is that school boards and cities function in very similar ways. Even though school boards take care of schools and cities take care of a big city, it's still important to understand how this hierarchy works, because as we move on to the county and state, you're going to see a lot of the similar patterns. You're going to see patterns of how the government works, how we're electing individuals, and what the powers of the electorates have. So as a school board member, as a city member, what are your roles and what are your obligations? And this is what we're going to go into when we talk about county and state tomorrow.